Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Good, please. Welcome everybody to the Town of Pelham July Planning Commission meeting. Brad, have roll call starting with you.
Brad Valentine.
Tim Pritchard.
Carol Hannah.
Drew Holloway.
Thank you, guys. Okay, we'll go ahead and do the minutes, but we'll switch the old and new business around. We'll do new business first when we do get to it. So if I could have you folks review the minutes as submitted and entertain a motion to accept. Correct.
I move that we accept the minutes.
Thank you, Brad. I have a motion to accept in a second.
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. All those in favor of the May minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving to new business. 24-1-132 Mill Road. Proposed rezone of existing private residential use parcel from recreation open space to single family large lot.
Right.
Through the town.
Okay, so this property, I'll give you a little background and then why the town is petitioning to rezone it on behalf of the owner. So this is on Mill Street. It abuts up to the Fall Creek there. And zoned rec and open space, it's about 5.27 acres or so. It's been a single family residence for just about ever. And it is located entirely within the floodway. But what we're looking to do is brought to our attention by the property owner that the property is zoned basically park space. I'm not really sure when or why this happened. I would assume it has something to do with it's completely in a floodway. Our GIS mapping just kind of auto corrected when we did our entire mapping update in 2021. However, what I did find, the oldest zoning map I have is from 2008, and it shows it as half rec and open space, half like HR, which is now our RC zoning. Even though it was never two parcels, I don't really know why. And then sometime between 2012 and 2016, it all became rec and open space. Again, I wasn't here. I don't have any other mapping records and I don't really know why. So if the owner wanted to do any sort of expansion or building of garage or a shed or something, they really couldn't do it with that rec and open space zoning. So given the current and past residential uses, the SF1 zoning seems appropriate to change this to. There is SF zoning in some areas around. If you go to the next slide, right on kind of the outskirts of our RC zoning. So as you get away from the city center, those larger lots become more apparent. This fits all of the size and setback requirements for SF1. And I did call DNR. They don't have any issue with it being rezoned. If this were to be a new parceling or a parcel split or something like that, it would make this a little more difficult because our town code states that when a new property is parceled, if it's any amount within the floodway, you have to have a minimum amount of space on that parcel out of the floodway to build a house in case the one you build in the floodway or the existing one in the floodway gets knocked over by a flood. So that's not really the case here at all. And like I said, DNR was totally fine with it. So I believe it's some sort of error.
But you're saying it is total floodway, the whole thing?
Yeah,
So
just
they-
like
they
the one
couldn't-
across the street in the peninsula.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's all on the floodway, the entirety of it.
So they couldn't decide to split it into two parcels and,
Yeah, I don't really think so. I don't think that's the intention anyway.
yeah.
But it's just one of those weird.
I don't think they probably said that you think if it was the current zoning was probably an error.
Well, it's been this way since somewhere around 2008. It's been zoned park space.
I suspect it was.
Yeah.
I think it's just the way that the floodway works. It just
And they
like I said,
updated that post Hurricane Katrina. They updated all the floodway stuff.
Oh, did they?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And like all the levees and things like that all had to be updated post Hurricane Katrina. So I bet there could have been a change to the floodway zoning
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah. And I think they're also working on getting a floodway elevation for the property anyway. So in talking with the owner, the town felt that it was our obligation to petition to rezone it.
Good.
So, and I haven't heard anything from any property owners or anything like that in the surrounding area.
Any questions, board?
No.
Sir, do you have any questions? Are you the owner? Or are you the property owner?
No, I just one of the neighbors.
Okay. You have any questions or comments?
don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have one question. When was the structure built?
Well, they said, the owner said that there's been a structure there since at least 1850 in some regard.
That existing structure
That one
or
I do
a
not know.
structure?
It's not that, they never gone to.
I don't know the, I guess, most modern structure on the property. I don't know when it was built.
That is an older structure and it has been added to the.
Is it his-
I believe his last name.
Yeah, no, the work was built, right?
And my name.
Yeah. So it's been around since I was a kid.
Is this just north of the old log cabin site?
Correct.
Sure.
Yep.
Right behind the Legion.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't see it from the road. There's,
No, there's
There's-
arborvitae's, big
Yeah.
old arborvitae's
yeah,
there.
you can't even tell there's a house there.
So,
Questions, comments? I'll go and make a motion to approve PC 07-102-24-1, 132 Mill Street as submitted.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brad. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of 24-1 as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
terrific.
Mr. Chair, can I ask?
Yes.
So, Andrew, back to what you were saying, can you explain further what happened by the
So when Hurricane Katrina happened, it was with the levees failing.
Yes.
So they went through and they started reassessing all of the floodplains. And I believe something came out within the last 10 years where they updated those floodplains just to more of a current status.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that in that update, when it did go through
Mhm.
to potentially rezone, it could have happened that way. And I know there are, I believe I don't know if it's the most updated, but Indiana Map has a lot of those resources available
Mhm.
Through IU to look at, and I think it might have the changes available as well.
I think I used the REST service from MCOG, so I don't know if they're
Sure.
connected through that, but I do have Indiana Map as a server
Yeah,
that I
that's a
can
good one.
connect to. Yeah. Okay, so I've got amendments for you.
Old business.
I only have 6. Easy peasy, right? All right, so from last month, we have those mechanical equipment landscape standards. So we determined that so this is only speaking to if a mechanical equipment like an HVAC system has to be placed in the front yard for any reason, it needs to have some sort of screening. So right now, requires a masonry wall and 15 feet of landscaping in all directions. So what I am suggesting is that we add that public utilities are exempt, so pad mount boxes in the front yards of subdivisions or things like that. I know we had some input from Greg Spitzer for the ease of access to those pad mount boxes, that they would definitely prefer less than more, but definitely not trees, which we haven't had that as an issue just yet anyway. So add that those are exempt. And the next thing is, should we allow for different materials other than masonry, like wood, stone, or metal, for those particular cases where an HVAC system has to sit in the front yard for some reason? As long as it's nearly 100% or 100% opaque. There's a lot of different kind of materials just besides brick masonry that that I think would be appropriate. And then the last thing is just removing that 15-foot radius, just putting that there's enough to obscure equipment. I think 15 feet is pretty excessive. And in some cases, that might be a majority of someone's front yard area. In some of those shallower setback zones that we do that. I don't really see this being a problem that often. The only thing I can think of is multifamily. If you have units where you're going in kind of a breezeway, and then you've got like 4 units on either side, in the front and the back. Their units will be in the front because they can't place them on the roof because there's another unit in the way or it's too expensive. The Hamilton Station apartments have that, and they have a little bit of landscaping around them, but they're definitely right by the lower floors, front porches. That's kind of the only instance I can think of those in, when there's really not another practical place to put it. So in
Well,
those
I think-
cases,
Yeah,
like those apartments would have had to put up some sort of screening wall along with that little bit of landscaping they already have.
and I think like with B, I think as long as it kind of fits in with the
Like the aesthetic of the
of the
building,
building, it doesn't
Yeah.
have, I don't think it masonry necessarily.
right?
Because that might not even look
No,
right, depending on what the rest of the building
Right.
is.
Yeah.
So,
so we could put masonry, wood, stone, metal, or other material that matches the architecture.
because I'm assuming it would be close to the house.
Mhm.
Structure.
Okay, so with that addition that Carol mentioned, anything else with this one that you see we need to change or add to?
I think you're good.
Okay. All right, then at the end, we will approve all of the ones that we've discussed, and we'll go through which numbers we've approved, and that's what we'll do. The next we have is hotel motel. It's been brought to my attention that there might be a better way to go about approving hotels, motels. We are writing a hotel licensing ordinance that the town is gonna be doing a first read of tomorrow. But within the UDO, what we can do to assure that hotels are placed in a case-by-case basis and go through our BZA is adding the conditional use to the 3 zones that they are permitted by right-in. That would be neighborhood business, general business, and heavy business. The other 2 zones where they're permitted on condition are downtown business and rec and open space.
So change everything to conditional.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or those 3.
The-
It's just those 3.
Those-
So then they would have to go through BZA to present their particular site plan and development and approval essentially.
That's good.
Have we had something like that come up?
I mean, we've had some potential hoteliers call here and they've got a viable spot for it,
Mhm.
but nothing in paper yet. Nothing's been submitted, nothing like that.
Are hotels appropriate in heavy business?
They can be, because those are, heavy business is more of our large box areas. So your Costco, your Target, things like that. And you do typically see hotels in those areas.
After you've shopped hours, done rest.
drive home.
Carol, we don't shop so. We're guys.
And,
This conversation earlier.
You don't have to put that in the
Guys,
minutes.
girls.
Allies
you
here.
just drive past home.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I said.
So any thoughts on that one? Besides proximity to Target?
I think we're good
No,
there.
yeah, good.
So with respect to the ordinance,
Hey, turn your phone on silent.
is a hotel the same as a short-term rental?
No, those are their own classification as a Airbnb or a Vrbo.
Are those also going to be licensed by the town?
Those are registerable. We have a registration program that they have to go through. So it's not a license, it's just a register permit.
Just out of curiosity, how many registered VRBOs, Airbnbs, or short-term rentals do we have in town? of
We
Pendleton?
we have 2 registered and we have 8 that we've informed need to register.
They'll pop up like you can't imagine.
I
Yeah,
don't
the
know about that.
The purpose of registration is,
So that we have a contact, that in case there's emergencies at the unit. They could be an in-state or an out-of-state person. And so we can keep track to make sure they have the correct zoning designation that allows short-term rentals by right. The ones that have existed here are grandfathered in, so they're just basically kind of retroactively registering. But any new ones that pop up, that's how we can keep track of those.
so with regards to out-of-town owners, who will enforce and or ensure that the adjacent residents are, I'll use the word protected from the short-term renters, Airbnb, VRBO? Is that gonna fall to the town and the police department? Will they handle all those complaints?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any restrictions on the density of VRBOs, Airbnbs
No.
with regards to the town of Pendleton?
They just have to have the correct zoning and register.
Michigan did require you to send out a letter to the surrounding neighbors.
Mhm. And I mean, we
And
could
it's-
make, if
you're
it,
looking at a vacation area. The reason I made another comment, there was probably 70 or 80 of them that come into Paradise last year. They bought these
Mhm.
houses up like hotcakes.
oh, yeah, well, that's a place to be right there on the water.
They got into the big registration, their registration fight.
Mhm. I mean, I think what we could do, similar to our hotel license, it's a, I think an every 2-year renewal kind of thing. Where they have to, we review, like police calls to the property if they have any violations for unsightly or unsafe buildings, and then that determines whether or not they can renew their hotel license. I think we could put something like that in place for Airbnb too, but it hasn't been an issue yet, so.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is in certain locales, the law enforcement agencies are basically saying this is a civil issue and are not responding. And when you have what is evolving into a high density of short-term rentals, VRBOs, Airbnbs, most of which have out-of-state owners, there is no enforcement and or monitoring and or correction of behaviors that are disrupting the other people.
I think the fact that we have a registration program in place, like I said, we can certainly amend it to be, reviewable by town manager or by a board, to either permit you or not your next annual registration.
Okay.
Based on calls of service, again, unsightly or unsafe.
Brown County actually invokes a distance and density requirement on theirs. So I can tell you in one location, 4 out of 5 houses in a strip were already or destined to be VRBOs, Airbnbs. And 3 of those had out-of-state owners.
Yeah.
Therefore, there was no one that had the vested interest in protecting the neighbors and or the community.
Mhm.
It's all about the revenue.
Yeah, we can certainly look into
It's,
that.
it's becoming a problem. People are renting their party and the dogs are going over in their yard,
Mhm.
trash is blowing over the
Parking.
yard, parking out on the streets.
Yeah, and I mean, we have standards like that they must follow. As far as how many parking spaces, how many people you can have there. You have to have a sign posted that says this is a Airbnb or something like that. Quiet hours. Things of that nature. So we do have an ordinance to enforce on our end
Is-
now.
Is the chief in total agreement for enforcement? Is he
Well,
willing to
what
dedicate
they
resources?
enforce is different from what we enforce. If someone calls and says there's a party and there's noise, that's their ordinance to enforce. If it's something like you've had too many people, the amount of people that you're sleeping in this house above what our ordinance allows, or you have not enough parking spaces here, that's the ordinance violations we can enforce.
So it's a two-tier enforcement process.
Correct.
I think we would need to be ready though. They do have a violation or to put them on double secret probation really quick because a year is a long time to renew their license.
Yeah,
We've
That-
had,
and
we've
so I
had some
think-
real fussy neighbors over a year.
I think if getting to that hotel license that we're looking to do a first read of tomorrow, I'll see what town council passes as far as the, if they have any edits, and then just kind of copy that language into.
I think they had
Short
a couple
term.
violations and we bring them back before the board, pull the license.
Yeah, we can do that for short term too.
So.
I've heard a lot of horror stories up north.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely look into that. I got it on my list here. But for number 2, are we good to amend that as written?
Mhm.
Yes.
The other thing, so number 3, this is just kind of a clarification thing. I think it's best practice what we do anyway, but we've had some rezones where the UDO states that you have to have municipal water and sewer hookup. But they are so completely out of range of that ability that we've said, once it's available as a condition on the rezone, once it's available, you must hook into it. I think we just need to put that language in those tables where it says you must hook up. Because we've already had some instances where that's just a condition upon.
But isn't that onerous upon the homeowner to A, invest in a well, and B, invest in a septic system, have it basically at the beginning of its life cycle, and then force connectivity into the sewer and the city water?
Where are we, which one are we at?
3,
Well, you really should have. When you apply for a building permit in the county, you have to have a septic permit. If you don't get the septic permit, you don't get the building permit.
This is.
At that time.
This is new.
yeah, this is. for-
Understand?
Yeah,
So I don't understand.
So we have a new development, and I may not understand it either. We have a new development going in. And the Fall Creek Regional Waste and the town do not have the ability to deliver sewer and water to that development at this time.
Then the development
It
can-
ain't gonna happen.
So you're not going to allow the development?
No.
now.
Okay,
What I'm talking about, I guess more specifically, is the things like Indy Boat Co. and the concrete company. Those are industrial and business uses. And they have a well and septic tanks because we don't have facilities out there. It costs us millions upon millions to take water out there. So in the event, if and when water goes down 700 and gets to them, they are required to then tap into our water.
why wouldn't you grandfather them if they've invested in probably a 4-inch or larger well?
I mean, this was a condition on that rezone that they had to do that, so. That's why I was kind of wanting to make sure we had something like that. If that's not something we wanna do, that's fine, but.
Fall Creek just ran the new line up on 32. We put, obviously, to mark our territory. I'm trying to, so 4 days. But, we told those people they did not have to hook on,
Okay.
and wanted to hook on, was at their expense to hook on, it wasn't mandatory.
So, I
So
mean.
it's our decision to run the line.
So the fact that this says in every zone except our act zones, essentially, it says for new development, you must have hooked to sewer and water.
Correct.
So how do we kind of say that to make sure that, we're covering our butts here? Because if that's what the code says and they've got zoning already for it, but there's no utilities around, we can't approve a plat or a site plan, or, you know what I mean?
But we don't, so an individual house going in. is not new. So
Right.
it's county ordinance too. Right? So,
Individual house, you gotta get a building permit, and septic permit before you move. Yeah.
so I'm thinking mobile fire. So if they put in a well or whatever, That's no big deal. If you have 500 homes going, they're all working off of, 500 homes, they're all working off of wells, well, you run into a problem with groundwater.
Right. I think I'm more like concerned about industrial slash business and over residential, because that's just, that, I mean, you just can't do that. But when we have these instances like Indy Boat Co. out there on 700 and the concrete plant, when we, if and when we ever get water out there, it was a requirement of their rezone to hook into our water. Now, I think they'd be happy with it because they probably want more water than their well can suffice, but moving forward, is that just something we want to look at on a case by case and not put this language in here?
Yeah, to answer your earlier question, I think you have to, it has to be our option, not their option. Because a lot of cases, we're not gonna want people to hook up to water because we can't afford to run water to them.
Which was the case in Indy Boat. They wanted
Yes.
water, but we weren't
Right.
gonna do that.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one, if you want, I can workshop that one after this discussion, but I do think it needs, because if you look at that, it says, no, you must have this to be able to have this development. We don't wanna tread on our own code.
Don't forget, I think we have to, so I'm trying to get big with water, I'll let you talk about sewer, but with water, we're gonna run into a problem with the rapid growth, we're gonna run into a problem with, if we don't make them hook up the treated water, that groundwater table is gonna be an issue. So if you're gonna have to go back, we're protecting them against themselves, because they have to go back retroactively and hook up, because the wells aren't gonna, as more and more wells go in, the groundwater table won't be able to sustain.
Right.
So
And this
are
does
they,
say in here sanitary sewer is under Fall Creek and they're, as far as hooking or not hooking in. It's not
So-
ours, so.
are the town wells in a different aquifer than the majority of,
Aquifer and groundwater table. You can have an aquifer, it's enormous, but it's inaccessible, so deep. The groundwater table, you could have a water table that sits above the aquifer.
so the town wells, are they in the actual,
They're into the aquifer.
they're into the aquifer? So they are deeper and beyond the groundwater? What's the current depth on the town wells?
No,
Just, all right,
yeah.
It's no shallower than the big tree. Right here, so.
whereas most residential wells are 60 to 150.
I'll workshop that one, but we can figure out some language or asterisks to maybe put in there about that.
And how many houses constitute a development?
It's 4 more lots.
Okay.
So next one I've got, is roof mechanical equipment screening. So this is actually a really good thing brought up in our gateway overlay, but I do think that particular aspect, we could use it everywhere. So that is screening of HVAC and venting and things like that, that go on top of the roof. I do have some examples in the G drive if you want to bring those up. They can be metal, or they could be an architecture that kind of matches the building. They can be solid or movable. That's a really basic example. There's also some really cool landscaping barriers for HVAC equipment that also doubles as a green roof, which I thought was really cool.
CIO down there, X210 has a nice screen.
Do
above
they
there.
up on the?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think this should be a requirement in all of our zones. The only one I kind of thought maybe industrial, since it's always so far back off the road. But we could, those are just our heavier districts anyway. So screen from public places or rights of way. So that could mean if you can't see it from the road, it's on the very, very rear of the building.
Mm.
Then that could suffice, but if it's up close or you know, kind of like where Wolfies is, they'd have to screen on 3 sides.
Should they screen the rear of the building if there is development behind them?
Well, I would say so, because the development would likely have right of way or public space.
Mhm.
So I guess in that case, if we're thinking Wolfies, when that road is built there, well, it's not gonna go all the way to their property.
And I'm thinking about the commercial development along State Street on the north side with potentially 1 and 2 story residential
Mhm.
sitting behind it, multifamily.
Yeah,
And or others.
yeah,
You could screen 3 sides, as
Yeah.
we discussed, and leave everything else open for the people looking south at
Yeah.
the mess.
yeah, I think it could be then on all 4 sides, anything that's visible. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the entire size of the roof. It can be just around the
Mhm, around
equipment
it.
itself. Or I mean, they could in theory do the whole roof if they wanted to, but.
Or we just add final plat approval.
Well, that's not typically when you have a building permit or a building design.
Why not make it screen all 4 sides?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That's fine.
Mhm.
Um,
Potential for that. both sides
Well, if I
to
can do
be
that, you gotta build a door.
Visible to somebody at some point,
You gotta build a door to get into things. Somehow.
you know,
Door, gate, or removable panel.
you know.
which I think that's fine. And I mean, that stuff. I mean, I don't know how much materials cost, but a nice metal screen doesn't seem like it would be too much more than what you're probably putting into a brand new building anyway. Okay, so I will add that, and then knowing that our gateway overlay has a little bit more standards, I guess, a little bit higher than that for that screening, but that was a really good point brought up. Number 5, what I've got here is right now our UDO says the administrator, which is the planning department, may refer a development being a secondary plat, so that could be commercial, industrial, or residential, to the planning commission for review and approval for any reason. But I wanted to add that if one of the board members wanted to review a secondary plat, that I would then bring it to you for review and approval instead of it being in the planning department. Cause that language isn't really clear in there. I mean, I think it's a best practice anyway, but we just want it in writing.
you
It
know.
was always the intent that you guys had the option.
Right.
And I think on some maybe higher visibility projects that would,
Mhm.
yeah, we would want to do that. Have the option, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll let you guys make the purchase. No problem.
Well, I like some of this stuff being in public though too,
No.
so the public,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's awareness of what we're doing and why.
And I'll also,
But
just
I love-
now that I'm thinking about it, this is for secondary plats,
Yeah.
but with the site plans, the administrator also has the ability to bring it to planning commission.
Mhm.
But those are a little bit different in that typically they're not anything you guys really ever see because they're not planning anything. It's just a piece of property. But I can look and see if this kind of language is in there too, where if you approve a rezone, say for the concrete company, you say, we want to review this site plan and approve it here, we can do that too.
Mhm.
I didn't even think about that, so I'll look at that one for next month. All right, good with that one? All right. And then last one I have, this one, I think was just a very minor oversight, so utility facilities are not permitted in institutional zoning, which is kind of our catch-all for government, churches, schools, facilities of that nature. So if you read the definition here, utility is defined as an agency basically that provides the public with electricity, gas, heat, steam, communication, transit, water, or sewer. But I would say our primary zoning for institutional uses like government structures are institutional. So all of Fall Creek's lift stations are institutional. Our water towers are institutional. The firehouse up until we got our new zoning designations was always institutional. Now it's just a part of downtown business. The cemetery and the barn are institutional. So I just, like, utility facility to me means a government town hall, or it means a water tower or an electric plant. But right now, if we were to try to, I don't know, build a water tower somewhere and that we already have institutional zoning, or no, and we don't have institutional zoning. I don't know what we rezone into, general business. Right, like that doesn't fit.
Yeah,
So like if we wanted to build a water tower on Fall Creek Drive near where the bridge is sitting, we would have to parcel that off and rezone it to a zone that allows that, which right now is general business, heavy business, heavy industrial, and then a few of them are conditional use. So it just doesn't make sense.
So with the growth and communications being under this umbrella,
Mhm.
how will the license holders for GSM mobile service, what zoning will they require to add towers and or capacities to serve the community?
I'd say institutional. That's where
Okay.
my knee-jerk reaction would be.
Say that again. I'm not sure I understood that.
The franchise holders for mobile communication services, as they are required to build more towers in this area to accommodate the 45 to 50,000 people that will ultimately be in the community, what zoning will they require to place those towers?
Or it could be within an easement too. Right? Cause don't some of them
Yeah.
attach to our
But I
towers?
think what you're alluding to is that we have to be careful, like that type of infrastructure is can be very obnoxious, and so we need to be careful with it. So.
Some communities require them to even mask them. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't,
I mean, I would think that if they say, okay, we wanna put this in here and buy this chunk of land and, need to rezone it to allow this communication use, then that would be within the rezone process to say, okay, now you must screen it. Right? Like, is that what I'm getting at here?
But, okay, so let's go back.
It's
So
hard to screen a
what,
150-foot tower.
yeah, so what zones would they be allowed to build at without having?
Well, I'd have to look because the utility is public or private. And so I would assume they would need institutional. That's what I would assume. I mean, communications might be separate as its own definition and use within the UDO. Do you know off the top of your head? With communications itself is separate from utility? I don't know, that's a
We
good
need a
Let's
question.
not get into this because I think we need to be careful, make sure we have control.
We need a separate line for communications, satellite,
I think. The back of my mind.
solar, wind.
And those all have their own use category.
So, yeah, rest of, not the rest off of my memory here, but I've been involved in other towns where this became a big issue, and so they ended up being very specific about hours. this
Well,
sort of thing.
what
So-
became the issue? Where it was located or how it was?
Yeah, because it was so high, and it was so obnoxious. If I, you had this area, this residential in the middle of this tower. And so. But let's look into best practices with this, because I don't think I think we want to be very.
I want to say within the last 5 years, didn't someone approach us about a very high tower for wireless internet services?
Wireless communication facility is its own category. It looks like it's conditional use most everywhere.
Okay, good.
Um,
Well, that's good.
yeah. Anywhere I can see it, because it has its caveat that it has its own specific development
Wireless
standards.
tower. Brad? Well,
Trying to remember where it was located.
I know we had height problem with concrete plant, they fixed that.
Let's see what it's about.
Because one of the gentlemen that worked for the company was up and was in front of us in opposition of the Carrick Glen expansion. And he subsequently has moved out of the community. All right.
Wireless communications.
And I guess part of the confusion is communication is listed here in this one.
Mhm.
And what is the difference between communications and the other definition of
It's,
wireless?
yeah, wireless is specific, right? The communication could be fiber, wire.
Let me see if there's a definition somewhere.
Microwave.
Microwave.
Specifically.
Well, that'd be wireless. Microwave.
What?
Microwave.
Microwave.
Bluetooth, microwave.
They please still have their network in place?
Still have the power.
I think it's their backup network, isn't it? Okay.
What's on our water tower?
Water tower is,
So. So they go out there, so they don't want the tower.
So there is.
I would definitely look into that
yep.
because
I was,
it's,
a good point was, we'll look into it. It sounds like just that quick, look, the end of it, it looks like they addressed this already, but we'll just.
Yeah.
Go through.
Just keep it on the radar. Okay,
That was a good catch.
so we have tabled,
Can I stop real quick? So back to the Airbnb. A question came up, do Airbnb owners have to appear at BZA to register? Is there,
no,
not yet?
no, if the short-term rental is a permitted use by right within their zone, all they have to do is register. If it's a conditional use within their zone, they do have to come to BZA. They get approved or disapproved. If they're approved, then they register with us.
Got it.
So what we'll do is look at updating our registration and standards to have some sort of more like a license, like what we're doing with the hotel, where there is a mechanism for revocation or denial. Which technically right now, that avenue is if we get enough complaints, it becomes an ordinance violation that's then seen by the BZA. So there is that route right now that can be taken.
It's gonna happen.
Okay, so we will workshop and come back to 3 and 6. And then 1, 2, 4, and 5 as discussed.
Okay,
Mhm.
Stephanie, is there any questions online?
you might want to take a look at Carmel and Hamilton County with regards to their towers and buildings.
Yeah.
Because they have not thrown up a lot of those.
One of the
In their
things.
service area.
Dig into where people put a smaller tower. up at the hill.
Private attachment.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like, somebody comes to, this is ridiculous. Somebody comes to Starbucks and says, we need to put in a mini tower, it's only 12 feet high, but. we want-
Yeah.
You wanna, we're right next to the interstate. And so,
You're in a hot spot.
they're in a hot spot. And we want to-
I mean, I suppose we could look at what the maximum height is in that particular
Yes.
zoning district, but I don't know if it necessarily defines what equipment on top of the building is part of that. or
Everybody
not.
wants it because they get
Yeah,
aerial.
they get dollar bills. Although I guess if that was put on a building and it was considered part of the primary structure height, it would have to be scraped like an HVAC system.
So
That would
let's-
probably look
let's
really
say it
tacky.
Met the height requirement, let's just ugly this out and. it
Right.
detracts From everybody else's property value.
Yeah.
So we gotta look into something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. We're good.
Sir, did you have any questions or comments?
Well, I lived here for 34 years. I grew up in North Zionsville back in the 70s. And,
Could you come up to the podium, please?
Sure.
State your name, your address,
Oh, you don't have to say your address anymore.
just your name.
my name's Russell Adams. And, like I said, I've lived here for 34 years. And I grew up in Boone County, just north of Zionsville, back in the 70s. And, reason I moved to Pilton because it reminded me of Zionsville back in those days. This small, nice little town, you know, and over the last probably 10 or 20 years, there's been a lot of changes in town, as everybody knows. And I know growth is not a bad thing, but I would really hate to see Pilton lose its identity like Pilton or like Zionsville and Carmel and Fishers. That would really be sad, I think.
We fight it all the time.
I don't understand that. I'm sure you do. I mean, I don't know if there's an answer or I don't know why everybody thinks Milton's the best place to live, but evidently there's quite a few people that have that opinion, but,
Yeah.
and it is a very nice place to live, don't be wrong. But, I mean, you gotta, I can't say you gotta draw a line because since it's the last person's gonna move to Pendleton, but, it just kind of scares me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, we appreciate your comments. We watch it all we can.
Mhm.
Well,
That's why whatever happens out the interstate, we're very, very cautious. We've turned down more things out there than we've approved,
well,
a lot. We got a lot of people that own land are probably somewhat frustrated with these boards that they brought a lot of potential buyers or developers to us and we've said no several times.
Our limit is when you do that, when a community wants to do that, they also can't violate people's rights, property owners, that sort of.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the high school's been added on 2 times since 90.
Yeah, probably. Right now, they're only about 75% capacity.
Okay.
And that's including 600 transfer students in from Anderson, LaPel, wherever they commute into, so
And I've not seen,
there's a lot of room in the school system.
I've never seen it, but I've heard there's a elementary over behind the, between the penitentiary and the interstate.
Yes,
So,
We don't incentivize growth, a lot of communities do that want to increase population, we don't put any of our incentives behind that.
it's just things that I've seen over the years and, like I said, I'd hate to see Pendleton lose its identity. It's a nice town, so
So,
I'm very proud to live here, so.
Yeah.
but it's also coming, and so
need a little growth, a little bit now and then, a little bit.
Well, I understand.
Lebanon exploded.
Oh, yeah.
Interstate, I mean, it's exploded exponentially.
Well, Lily's just bought a bunch of very nice, farm ground
Yeah,
and is, turned into concrete, so
yeah.
that's really all I have to say, so.
I appreciate your
Thank
comments.
you. Well.
Good.
You have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, UDO, items 1, 2, 3,
No, 4.
1, 1, 2, 4, and 5.
Correct.
As submitted and stated, I'll make a motion to approve those. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, thank you, Carol. All those in favor of 1, 2, 4, 5, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
That's it. 4 minutes short, I know.
Good guys.
All right, you gotta adjourn our meeting, President.